Hey, welcome to episode 237 of Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. Sometimes in life, I know I've struggled to be passionate about the things I believe in, and I talk to other people with similar struggles. My guest today luckily doesn't seem to have that struggle. In his words, he says, "My passion is a place beyond question. When I know I'm right and my passion and heart are aligned, either help me out, get out of my way, or be invisible. Get out of my way and be invisible, or stand in my way and look stupid." He has a lot of clarity, which is amazing. You are going to be inspired by this man. I'm going to tell you more about him, but first, this.
Today's guest, Kade Wells.
Well, welcome back to Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. I'm still your host, Jason Freeman, and I still have a speech impediment, which I've come to love. So, by way of telling you about my guest today, I'm going to start here. Many people have heard of the game Dungeons and Dragons, or affectionately referred to D&D. But few know the profound academic and therapeutic benefits it possesses. Fortunately for the 1,200 or so middle school students who have been taught to play the game as part of their curriculum, Kade Wells knows about these benefits firsthand. Kade recognizes that D&D helps young people build strong friendships and community, develop crucial problem-solving skills, and expand their creativity exponentially. The game can even help them express deeply held emotional pain in a safe way. Kate was one of the first teachers to bring attention to the serious academic design of this game to school administrators. As you can imagine, bringing attention to the benefits of Dungeons and Dragons was one thing, but getting D&D implemented as part of the school curriculums in Texas and South Dakota was quite another. In fact, it was an epic quest. Fortunately, Kay was up to the adventure. Before becoming a teacher, Kay was on a quest to find the spark of his purpose. His journey involved going to UNL, where he studied screenwriting and directing, obtaining a degree in production and communication, and starting a business that brought community theater to small towns. He had a short-lived dream of opening a restaurant with a friend before meeting his wife and becoming a proud father. Please welcome the one and the only Kade Wells to Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. Woo! Woohoo! Woohoo!
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate you, bud.
So, you're welcome, Kate. I would have had a bigger chilling section for you, but this is pre-recorded and I have no audience, so it's just me.
Not needed.
So for someone who had never heard of Dungeons and Dragons, how would you describe this game in a nutshell?
It's known as a tabletop role-playing game. So like any kind of board game, you sit down at a table together, but instead of playing a hat that goes around a board and buys property, you play a character that you basically design through a series of choices you make with the books that are the manuals that you play the game with. There are several, but you really only need three. The Player's Handbook, the Monster's Manual, the Dungeon Master's Guide. Dungeons and Dragons is facilitated by one storyteller, which is the Dungeon Master. They run the game, they run the monsters. They are basically everybody in the story who's not a player. They create the adventures, they draw the storyline out, and then the players take on the role of a character, and you use dice to create the random chance of life, and those are the variable numerics, and then there's static numerics that are built into your character through those decisions that you made. So largely it's a game where you fight monsters with math, really. And of course, much of it takes place in the imagination, but you also have visuals and manipulatives and things like that go into it. So you end up with, it's often described as like you're playing in a book that hasn't been written yet. So if you can kind of just
you're playing in a book that hasn't been written yet.
Yep.
That's cool.
Yep, but it is really cool. That's actually one of the coolest things of my whole life.
So are the players playing against each other? Like, will one of them win?
No, there's no. We actually joke sometimes in my sessions about like they'll defeat an epic monster or whatever, and they'll be like, "Yay, we won D&D." You don't win D&D. D&D emulates life, and so the things that allow you to feel like you've won in life are the same things for the characters that you play. So you've fulfilled some epic quest and you've got a deed to the local rundown castle that you now own. You have, you've leveled up, you found a cool magic sword, you found an unknown spell book in the depths of some, crazy dungeon. Those are the things that you win. So just like in life, you don't win life because life continues to go on, right? As many times as you win, there may be loss coming eventually. And so D&D definitely emulates life. And in that way, it helps children practice at life, if you will, in a very safe and somewhat controlled way. And while allowing them to have advocacy and agency, of course, they're kids, so their role plays are silly largely versus adults who have more life experience and see a different side of the game. For kids, they're just exploring this concept of social ability and this idea of pretend. But in business, what they call them simulations, right? That's a really common thing in businesses anymore is running simulations in order to practice something like a firewall breach. Okay, for instance, with a company, like who does what when this happens. We have this much time to do this. In fact, I just discussed this with my brother not too long ago, and we role played out a little bit about how he could run that with his team. I veered a little bit. Sorry.
Were in the game with players playing together, would they ever like be on opposite teams?
Yeah, I mean. Oh, sorry about that. Occasionally, if you're playing a character well, characters won't always get along, right? Like if you're actually playing somebody else and we're all friends at the table, right? But like if I'm playing, a sneaky rogue and you're playing the paladin, they're not going to always see eye to eye. But they're never they should never be pitted against each other, right? Like there are instances where maybe a ghost possesses somebody and then they attack the party. Well, that's still the dungeon master operating through that character, right? Taking away the player's agency. But there's been plenty of times over the years where you see squabbling, right? Like I really wanted that magic item that you took, or I wanted to go on this quest and you keep stonewalling us and preventing us from doing it. But by and large, no, players are not in competition. It's a cooperative game. That's one of the great things about it is that you're all in it together, and you have these different classes that fulfill a different role. So, you have wizards and rogues and fighters and paladins and barbarians and rangers and druids and all these different kinds of character classes. And what I've come to find out throughout my life, obviously, is that we all represent those types of character classes, and we can't do all of life all by ourselves. Like, anybody who can do that, I'd be super duper impressed. And I know people who get close, but in my life and in the lives of all the people that I've known, you kind of have to have an adventuring party amongst your peers or family to help, support what the things that come up in life, right? Like, I'm a really good problem solver, but you don't ever want me to build something out of wood, like I can design something, but you don't want me plumbing your house. You know what I mean? So D&D is shown with great color to me that the need for different types of people in life. And so in D&D, as in life, we don't always get along, but ultimately you find out that you still need the help from people that you might not get along with. So my father always said, be nice to everybody at all times, because you never know when you're going to need somebody's help. And if someone needs your help them before they have to ask. And that will bring good things to life.
So in life, you want to be able to make your adventuring party as large as you can, kind of, because everyone has.
Yeah. The more adventurers you have in your purview, the more capabilities I would think that exist for that group entirely. Then when you have a group, it's not about the individual, right? That individual is part of the group, and all the group has to help each other.
Maybe not as large as you can, but you want to make your adventuring party.
You're trying to actually fulfill you're fulfilling certain roles. So even in my friendships, all the buddies that I have from college, because of D&D, 27 years now, I think is where we're at. I've got 2 tradesmen, 2 social workers, nonprofit government, you got a teacher, so even just in my friend group, there's a purview, and that's just a few of them, a purview of really amazing difference, right? Like we all work different jobs and kind of have different lives, but ultimately we overlap when it really matters and counts the most.
What's an importance to a student of being able to design their own character?
What about students?
What's the importance to a student of being able to design their own character?
It's incredibly important. So as a teacher, especially for my incoming 7th graders, for instance, they've never played D&D before, and I know them a little bit because I, got to know them in 6th grade, but I don't teach them in 6th grade. But you get to know them. I sit with them at lunch and stuff, and we just chat and visit and get to know each other in a general way. When they enter 7th grade, they make characters for the first time, and the choices you make during character creation indicate the choices the child wanted to make, right? So the type of character that they end up becoming tells me a whole bunch about them. That, imagine go back to your first day of school, and the teacher gives you all the get to know you activities. You draw a picture of a tree or whatever, campfire or whatever. And they're really, I'm going to call them dumb. They're probably not dumb. They're very simple. They're very simple, right? They're super simple. And the kids are like, oh, great, I'm back in school. Here we go. And I have players' handbooks and character sheets right away and explain this is going to be deep. You're not all going to get it. You won't understand it all. Doesn't matter. I'm here to help you. We're all going to figure it out together. So we start that community immediately. But even the kids who resist it right away, they're like, oh, this is dumb. Well, that tells me a lot about them, right? I don't need to go through this other activity to realize that this kid's probably going to need more support in my room than the other kids were like, oh man, this is amazing, right? And so then the choices that they make within the choices that they have to make, I mean, you're talking about probably 100 choices, okay? So each of those choices indicates a psychological framework for that child, right? Am I a fighter or am I a wizard are very different in the scale of who that child is in their own mind and heart. And so then by the time they get done with character creation, we go onto the site called Hero Forge, which is designed, the site is made for making miniatures, and you can design your own mini and they'll send it to you, or you can download the STL file and you can print them. For my kiddos.
So these are little tangible characters.
Yeah, well, they can be. I have tons of miniatures. They're kind of expensive order from Hero Forge. So what they do is they model visually in 3D, that's 2D, but on the screen, you can turn your model and everything. And then I print those out for them, and that goes on their D&D folder so that everybody gets to see what their character looks like. So what you're trying to do, of course, is develop identity, right? And so the really neat thing about kids creating those characters is they have extended a sense of their inner identity outward and are able to show it to people. And then even better than that, because, lots of projects like that exist in school. Draw a picture of a character and write a little short story. They get to play that character for like 36 Fridays as we go through the course of a year, which means that not only does that character exist on this picture, it exists in the imagination of not only the person who made them, but comes to invade the imagination of everyone else at the table, as does all the other characters for each of the other players, right? I mentioned in the TED talk, there's this thing that happens when people play D&D with fidelity, because we actually go to this weird pocket dimension in our imagination that we're all actually a part of at the same time. And when all the people present can see the same fantasy that isn't actually there, I argue that there is this sense of reality that happens in the minds of the people that are present. So yeah, watching kids make characters is I'm going to tell you, it's not easy, because the details of the game are there are so many, right? And you want them to be able to play it well mechanically, because that's why we get to do it academically, is because as an academic task, if you're following the system of gameplay, it's highly detailed. It's like a database driven system. There's lots of things to keep track of. But what I found after years of doing this is that the myelin sheath. Okay, so D&D uses your whole brain. When you're playing it, you use your whole brain. I'm going back to this thought of kids. They use your whole brain. Well, the middle school kids are not used to using their whole brain. Okay, like the frontal lobe is super underdeveloped, and the piece of the brain that I can never remember, and I always feel so dumb because I look at it all the time. It's the part that connects the frontal lobe to the left and right hemispheres. And so
I can't remember it either.
I should know what it is because I literally reference it all the time. But that is really underdeveloped, even more underdeveloped than the frontal lobe in middle school children. So when you're playing D&D, you have this information that's stored in your left brain from the books, and you're reading the books, and your left brain's trying to make sense of that. Meanwhile, your right brain has to make creation from that, and you're actually like manifesting a character out of all of these rules. And then your frontal lobe is helping you make decisions about what your imaginary character would like to do. And so what ends up happening is the myelin sheath in that center part of the brain that goes to the frontal lobe and the two hemispheres starts to get wider and wider and wider and wider with every single time they play, only if they approach it with enthusiasm or at least some fidelity. If they don't, if they ignore it, they resist, they're not going to change at all, just like teaching someone anything, right? But what ends up happening is that myelin sheath gets so well utilized that when they suddenly go to take a test like 6 months later, for some reason, that test is just really easy. And they're like, wow, I guess I'm smarter than I thought I was. Well, you're actually exercising your brain all at the same time while enhancing your listening and all the other social things that go with it. But the brain science behind what goes on when people, especially children, are playing D&D because of the brain development of children and where they're at, is very significant, very significant.
You mentioned the social aspect. How have you seen D&D help kids who are very shy and introverted?
It's amazing. It's literally incredible. So I'll use picking dungeon masters in 7th grade as an example.
How do you pick dungeon masters?
Yeah. So you're looking for a certain set of skills, and you don't know who it's going to be. So in the beginning, I just have everybody make characters, and I kind of just pay attention to who is really enthusiastic about it, who kind of seems to have a sense of like how the text works, who likes fantasy movies. You're kind of looking for specific little check boxes of individuals, and then I wait a couple of solid weeks. I'm going to say maybe even almost a month before I lock in dungeon masters. And oftentimes dungeon masters are studious and shy. And when I tell them, hey, you exhibit all of the components that would make a good dungeon master, they're like, me? It's like, yeah, you. And what happens is they're no longer introverted. I mean, they'll always be soft and, gentle people. But I watched one of my favorite dungeon masters, who's now just about done with 9th grade, had her for 2 years. And when she started being a dungeon master, she was shy and brilliant. They always have this really cognitive capability. But by the end of 7th grade, after Christmas, she would go from lunch table to lunch table just talking to people. And this would be just something that wouldn't happen. Okay. And I've watched this stuff happen a lot, right? Just mentioned to one of my 8th grade girls who's about to leave, and she was a dungeon master for 2 years. And she said, Mr. Wells, this helped me so much with my ability just to talk to people, especially people that I didn't know. I'm no longer afraid that I'm going to like be weird or awkward or say something stupid, because they've gotten so much practice at delivering material for the sake of the adventures that they run, that they begin to feel important and almost kind of like quarterbacks in a way, if you will, right? Like the high school quarterback, well, he feels good about himself. My dungeon masters end up feeling really good about themselves when things go well. And obviously things don't always go well. But yeah, watching kids go from introversion to extroversion is neat. Cooler than that, even though, are the kids that don't really fit. Okay. Like I can think of 100 of them. And you introduce D&D to them and they're like, oh man, like this is where I belong. And then they have a place to belong. And not only will they belong in that space for middle school, the game doesn't go away, right? The game is out there. There are, millions of people that play it. And so they never have to be alone again, ever. They don't ever have to be alone again. Sorry.
Well, it's a big deal, huh? It's
Yeah.
a huge deal.
Sorry.
Huge deal. Well, one thing that moved me way away about your TEDx talk is you're a passionate kid. You have a lot of passion, which is very, very appealing. So, just a quick question. Like, you teach English, so I imagine you can't just have all of each class dedicated to playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, we play on Fridays.
Oh, you play Fridays.
Yep, we just play on Fridays. It's actually built in as recovery as well. So like if you're behind on a bunch of work, you don't get to play D&D on Friday. I'm really resistant. They have to be struggling pretty bad before I pull it, because I know what D&D does for kids and I don't want them to lose the experience. But a couple Fridays here and there for the kiddo who can't pull their life together and needs time to work, that means there's a day of the week where we're not moving forward on papers, books, whatever it is that we're doing. They get a chance built into our week to try to catch up. And meanwhile, we're playing D&D and having fun, but there isn't this like critical assessment, paper or something tied to our gameplay. Our gameplay facilitates all the other sorts of skills, and it's not unimportant at all. But when you approach administration and parents with that sort of thing, hey, by the way, we play once a week and here's why, they're like, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense, right? So no, in my class, the rest of the time in my class, we do, it's not normal English stuff. Everything we do is creation. Since I've been playing D&D since I was 10, I wanted my teacher life to represent sort of like the campaigns that you play in D&D, right? Like we start our 7th grade year with The Hobbit. And we read The Hobbit and we go through the adventure of Bilbo Baggins, and they're making their characters at the same time and they're starting to play at the same time. So those things mirror each other. And then we go into dystopia with Ayn Rand's Anthem and Fahrenheit 451. In 8th grade, we start with Flowers for Algernon, a fantastic book, and then go into Ready Player One, where they literally role play through the book like Wade Watts does. They have to watch, their parents are sent this huge list of media, and they get points on a leaderboard for watching old movies and playing Atari and Nintendo games. And parents love that because they get a chance to share their media culture with their children, and their children get to understand where all the stuff they love came from in the first place. And so those types of things, we do this thing in the spring called the Multi-Genre Project. It is exactly what it sounds like, but the 7th graders do World War II, the 8th graders do civil rights, and they just choose a character from any avenue. So like in the World War II one, the kids can pick any person from any part of the conflict, right? Anybody. And they research them with great fidelity, write a little intro essay. They write 2 short stories, 2 letters, 2 poems, and we'll put together a display board with pictures and chunks of their writing and do QR codes with like little iMovie that they make. And then we invite the community to come and see these things when they're all put up together in the library. The civil rights over here, the World War II over here, and parents and grandparents and stuff are all there. And so I'm always attempting to celebrate learning. Like, a workbook with the blanks filled in doesn't make a great museum piece, if you will, right? And so as I approach my life as a teacher, I wanted it to be as cool for the kids as possible because of my gaming background. It's like, well, how can this be an adventure? How can this be something that's tangible, meaningful, memorable, and magical for them, right? Like, how can this be as cool as it can be? And it's difficult at first because you want to build models for these things so that kids have a concept of what they're making. And so that you also, as a teacher, understand where things will break down for them. And you won't know that until you do it yourself. So any teachers that start, like student teachers that are with me, or even just new teachers that are nearby in the building asking for advice, my advice is modeling. Anything you asking them to do it too, including they're taking a test. If you can take that test as well. That way, when you look up the ceiling, you're like, oh man, number 9. They're like, yeah, right, number 9. It creates this unity, right? And I know I'm
what? I've never once seen this. You take the test along with your students?
Sure, why not?
I mean, it's brilliant. It makes
Doesn't it kind of make sense?
Yeah. Like a cross-country coach should run with the runners. You take the tests along with your students.
Yep, they take these really hard quarterly tests, and we actually only do it 3 times because they get tested enough. But I kind of do it as test prep, and it's part of the Canon curriculum that I basically pulled because I like the tests because they're hard. And every year I take them, and every year I still don't get 100% because they're just that hard. The distractors are just super difficult, right? Like A and C are so close together in their terms of correctness. And then that's why I take it with them, because I know that it's hard. And then my score in the end ends up being the 100% score for the class. So if there's 17 points on this little reading test and I get 14, that means 14 for them is 100%. Does that make sense?
I bet the kids love the concept that that teacher gets some questions wrong. That teacher's not
that's going to be their 100%. They're like, oh yeah, Mr. Wells, get some more wrong. You know, and so beyond just that, though, it creates this concept of community, right? Like, and I go back to living on the farm where anything that we were asked to do, largely, it wasn't like we were sent off to do it. Dad didn't say, go make the fence line across the north pasture by yourself. It was like, hey, I need your help helping me with the fence line across the north pasture. Well, this was like a systematic thing in our lives. And I see teaching as exactly the same. Like, if you're not actually present and doing something with your kids while they're doing the stuff that you're asking them to do, what are you really doing? You know, and like, the product-based learning thing is cool. It's hard at first because you got to make all the stuff, right? That first year, especially, you're making all this stuff, but you're making it alongside of them as they're making it, right? If you're doing it for the first time, then they're going to see you, writing on your screen. Put your computer on and let the writing go on the screen. When you're doing your display boards, they're seeing you do it as they're doing it. So there's still this community. And then after that, you're done. Like every year, then you get to use that same model and maybe tweak it a little bit. But that creates a sense of learning that everybody should try to embrace. Certain contents are easier and easier to do that than others, like English. Obviously, it's pretty easy to make stuff and make that sort of learning reachable and meaningful. But modeling is probably the number one crucial thing that's the simplest way to get the most kids. Okay. And so when we play D&D, I have to model it. We start with the Dungeon Master's characters and we do a fishbowl, which is when we're playing in the center of the room and everybody else is watching around us with their character sheets in their hands. And I'm, basically playing with these Dungeon Masters so that everyone else gets to see what this game actually looks like. Cause they spent, a week and a half making their characters and doing all this stuff. And then they actually get to see what it looks like. And they're like, oh, okay, so that's what that means. And that's modeling, right? And so it's not a new teacher strategy, but I do feel it is underutilized. And friends that I've had that have joined the profession, like my next door neighbor just through this wall back here, he has mentioned, like, my time with you, the number one thing that I took away is modeling. Like it is imperative to model, because if you're not going to model, prepare to be disappointed in all things in life.
Please tell me a little bit more about project-based learning.
Product and project-based learning is...
project. I'm sorry. Said project.
Project and product is similar. Product-based learning will end up with a tangible thing. So if you are reading a book, it's best to, if a really common example is you're reading a book, you're going to write a paper, right? The paper is a tangible product. It's not a great product, but it's a tangible product. In math, a lot of my math folks are quite brilliant, very artistic. They'll make little 3-dimensional towns using geometry, right? Like the kids have a certain criteria that they have to fulfill, and then they put their town together on a piece of cardboard, and their town stands, right? And it's buildings and water towers and things like that. That's a product-based learning thing from math. The multi-genre project is a product, obviously. Okay. My kids make short story. My 8th graders write short stories in October, and they create little iMovies using AI generated art. Feel how you want about it. It's available to me as a teacher for kids to render images quickly for a school project. So I don't care. Sorry to all the artists, right? Whatever. It's for kids, right? It's for kids, man. Like they're going to get to put together their own moving graphic novel where they speak the words and have a story take place visually. And we spend a week and have popcorn and eat candy and watch our spooky stories. That's a great example of a product-based learning entity.
They must love having popcorn and eating candy and watching each other's.
Yep. It's pretty cool. And sometimes they're super cringy bad sometimes, right? And that's fun in its own way. And it would you just create that culture of respect where it's like, some of us are better at these things than others. I can't play basketball, so it's whatever, But yeah, that's an example of product-based learning.
So thinking of your kids as they go on beyond 7th and 8th grade, please tell the story of you told this in your TEDx talk, how you got to college and it was going all right. But one day you were walking down the hall in your dorm and you heard someone playing the guitar.
Yeah, that was my buddy Nick. When I popped into it, and he was playing the bass. That was his thing. And I saw a player's handbook on his coffee table. This is freshman year in the dorm. And I saw Dungeons and Dragons player's handbook, which is the manual you use to create your characters, on his coffee table. And I, noticing it for the first time, I'm like, dude, you play D&D? And he's like, yeah. And stopped playing his bass and set it aside immediately. And he's like, you play D&D? And I was like, yeah, dude, I absolutely love it. And he says, well, come in, let's talk about it. And so from there, there was a person from my old hometown and like 2 from his hometown, or 2 from my hometown, 2 from his hometown. And we made a party. And from that party, other friendships were in the purview, and our D&D group would get a little larger over the years, but they're now my friends 27 years. We all live in the same town together, and anything that we're doing together as a group, that's the group, that's the OG guys. Right. And now having all of our families being friends, our kids our kids play together, all the really cool things that a person kind of wants out of life all came from that moment where I saw a player's handbook on Nick's coffee table. That grain of sand, right? That's the thing.
Then somewhat later, you were working at this restaurant that will go unnamed, but it was not a good experience, and you were just you did arrogantly went pew pew.
Oh yeah.
Pew, pew. And what did that lead to?
The latest friend that we joined, we were in the depths of hell in the North Country and the
So you didn't like that job too much?
Nope. My other buddy Nick, at one point in college, threw trash, and he was the one that ended up being there with me. He was a garbage man for a little while during college, and he said that he would rather throw garbage than work at this particular restaurant. So anyway, there was a cook there, and his name is Dustin. And one day I was picking up my, boneless wings, and he goes pew 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 through the hotline, and I was like, "What was that?" He's like, "Oh, I just blasted you with my laser pistol." I was like, "Oh yeah, that's funny. That's a cool guy, right? At least he's in the nerd canon." And I don't know, a couple of weeks passed, and winter just got worse and worse. And I looked at my other buddy Nick, and I said, "Hey man, we should probably play D&D or something, because there's nothing to do around here, and it's so cold." And we were just kind of miserable and depressed because things just hadn't lined up the way that we had saw. And so we're picking up our dishes to go out and deliver them. And Dusty's grilling, you know, with the spat, flipping steaks. And I was like, hey, should we ask this geek to see if he wants to play D&D? He's like, yeah, dude, that sounds great. So I said, hey, Dio, you want to play D&D with my friend Nick and I? And he slaps the spatula down on the grill and he turns around and he looks at us. Hell yeah, I want to play Dungeons and Dragons with you nerds. And then he turns around and goes back to cooking, right? Well, now, man, it's been 15 years and he lives here now with us in Sioux Falls. He has met his wife through a friendship that I had through another hobby, and now has 3 kids, right? And so had that moment not happened, my friend's life, who's also a part of my life, would have been irrevocably different. So different that
if there had been no D&D, that wouldn't have happened.
Nope. And I've seen it so many times. That that's why it does this to me, is because it's been the most profound and it's sometimes it's embarrassing because it's like, it's just D&D, right? Like, it's just a dumb game. But if it had not been for that dumb game, I wouldn't even be able to recognize my own life, let alone the life of like my buddy Dusty, who is now, a full-blown, grown-up human with all the, all this stuff, and has a great life, right? Just like all of my friends and I. But it all goes back to this root core thing that bonded us at basically a spiritual level, almost, if you will. And I never really mentioned this, but a lot of our other likes overlapped as well. This is when I was in college, this is 1998. And so music was great. Movies were amazing, right? And art was much different than it is today. Like, people as soon as you bought a CD, you pulled the sleeve out and you started reading the lyrics of all the songs so that you could start getting into the artist's head. So like, we were all those people already. And so, yeah, it wasn't like it was just D&D. Like, through D&D, we learned that we have an awful lot of stuff in common, right? And so I would think that that's the case for a lot of people who play D&D. It's like, you meet somebody, you're like, oh, dude, you play D&D. Well, that's the most important thing. But we also like camping, and we also like boating, and we also like fishing, or whatever it might be. There's obviously going to be other things that align.
So you said that, without going into detail, you said at one point in your life there was a path of darkness, or there were your friends in this game, and you had to choose between the two.
Yeah.
What was that like, having that choice before you?
Well, if anybody's seen, like, I like to use the movie Dazed and Confused, because I'm kind of like, in high school, I was kind of like Randall Pink Floyd, the main character from Dazed and Confused. I had friends in every group. I was an athlete, and I was a geek, and, I had my bad side where I was getting in trouble. And those 3 parts existed in simultaneity. And when the trouble got real bad, and I was going through horror, basically, there was only one choice at that point. It was like, it was so obvious to me that this was always the group of people, the D&D group, and this was high school kids at the time. So that was always where I belonged. And that for me to have thought that I was supposed to fit in with these people, or whatever, was actually ridiculous. Though I wasn't supposed to. I was supposed to be with these sweet nerds who are artistic and love music and art and culture and, the concepts of traveling, and where your level of success didn't have anything to do with how much you could bench press, or how fast you could run. I get such a kick. Man, I tell you what, like, our district's super athletic, right? Like, athletics is like the number one big thing, seemingly. It's what I can see from my point of view anyway. And you'll get parents, and I've always appreciated parents' points of view, but it's come down sometimes to like, well, your child will make a perfect dungeon master. I know you don't know what that means, but I'm telling you that's a really good thing that your child has those capabilities for this particular thing. I know that they're in, let's say, cross country. I need them for 2 Wednesdays after school so that I can run them through some stuff so that they can help play this with fidelity with their peers in class. I asked the coach, they're going to miss, they're going to miss 2 practices. What do you think? And they're like, oh, no. My child is not missing practice for some, nerd thing. And the thing that sinks into my heart about that is because people have no idea. Okay. Athletics goes away, right? Like the other lady at the TEDx talking about retirement and athletics. Like, yeah, you got them in 3 sports their whole life. Okay. And then, yep, great. They get a college scholarship and college gets a little cheaper for them. That's fantastic. Great news. Good. It will end for 99.5% of all children. Okay. If you're in the 0.5% that gets some sort of like professional athletics, something, that's awesome. But I cannot. And my brother was an LD debater, a Lincoln Douglas debater, and he was amazing at it. We both kind of, and I played football and so did he. And it wasn't like, oh, sports are, stupid, but like this super hyper focus of like, our kids are going to be the greatest athletes of all the world is a strange thing to me. Because it's so limited in what it can actually provide, right? It gives you like teamwork and, it shows discipline in the stuff, but there's so much pressure on it as well. And kids are required and requested to perform. And largely it's like a rewiring. They didn't know life without it, right? In the first place. And I shouldn't digress in this because people's passions are their passions, right? And if people are like, yay, sports, that's awesome. But my point is that learning how to play Dungeons and Dragons is going to be much more impactful later on in life than like a cross country meet, but maybe that's for me. I might be way out of line there. But for an academic, thing, it's like, okay, two practices of cross country is all I'm asking for. And it's like, no. What is the coach going to say? It's like, well, the coach told me it was fine, but whatever, you're the parent. So go sports. And that's totally
go
fine.
sportsing.
Go sports. And
speaking of learning, what did you learn from studying screenwriting and directing that you use today?
Well, I use movie making a lot because the kiddos are using them to make products. Like it's one thing to write a short story. It's another to be able to read the dialogue, to read it and create, visuals and put in, some sense of special effects. I have filming equipment, lights and cords and things, tripods and stuff that my kiddos will use for little things here and there. Like, we just did Shark Tank in 8th grade and they have to shoot a little 30 to 60 second commercial. And so obviously that skill transfers. I do show them what screenwriting looks like in terms of its form and stuff. And we do like a really small thing where I show them how screenplay format works. And when we watch like Romeo and Juliet, the Baz Luhrmann, Leonardo DiCaprio, Claire Danes, I'm able to break down like what the director and designers were actually doing after we read the play, because we go through the play with great fidelity. And I pull out all of my Shakespeare teacher had a PhD from Harvard. So he was very, very good. Dr. Adrian Weiss. He's an amazingly intelligent person. And so I got to learn things about Shakespeare that I know that just a quote unquote regular, teacher may not have access to. And so I pull all that stuff out for them while we're going through the story. And then when we watch the movie, I'll say, this is how I know the people who made this movie knew their Shakespeare, is because the visual motifs and, like the water versus dust. And so I use that analytical ability from film school to help make movies more, like you're going to look really good on a date someday, right? Like that's that, I can interest them with any kind of hook in that way, but mostly it's just, I have more to offer, right? I have more wisdom to offer them. And they think it's neat, right? Like, oh, that's the color blue. That's what it means, right? And I mentioned at one point just recently when we were watching Romeo and Juliet that the filmmaker Godard once asked like how he felt about his filmmaking job. Like, what is it that you actually do? And he says, I paint with light. And so I told them, think about this when you're watching a movie. The act of making a movie is painting with light. It's literally what it is. So I use it in lots of little ways, I guess I would say.
Powerful. Well, Kate, so this is your email address, and it's going to be your website someday. But what does the idea of building heroes mean to you?
Building heroes means that kind of like the Statue of Liberty, right? Bring me, you're tired, you're hungry, you're poor. Taking kids who are like me and getting in trouble, or kids who don't fit in because of whatever reason, kids who have suffered, even kids who just don't think that something like this would be for them, and then discovering, that it's incredibly helpful and powerful, that it brings kids together and people together, that it fixes broken, it saves the lost. It's this thing that I have inside of me that wants to just help as many people as I can before my time is up. And so that idea of building, well, what is it that I'm building? And I was like, and that was that conversation with Victor. And I was like, I build heroes. That's what I build.
Conversation with Victor.
Yeah, that's the boy from Houston.
Oh yeah.
So it's the idea of building heroes is what can we do with what's already present in a person or a child, and how can we bring the best parts of them to the surface and allow them to flourish in a way that nothing else will do. And it's weird that Dungeons and Dragons does that, but again, it's not just D&D, right? It's the product-based learning, it's the environment we create, it's the relationship we build, it's all the things that form into this, student that when they leave me, just like in the talk, it's like, it'll be maybe 10 minutes from when they leave me. It might be 10 years from when they leave me, but every kid, I have no doubt that every kid is going to go, oh, Mr. Wells was right. And he really cared and he really tried, and whatever it is. So the idea of building heroes is just like, how can we make the most out of every child? Yeah. And for website, whatever, it's never really been, I'm a full-time teacher. I should have been better at side gig, but I got a really good friend now helping me with the website, and I think it's going to be called the Wizard Wells, honestly.
The Wizard Wells.
Yeah, Building Heroes LLC, Wizard Wells. Also finally got back to working on the book. I think I'm on page 58. It's going real well, and I'm going to have to start back at the beginning and, go through again, but that'll be cool because then I can start adding up some pieces that I was skimming over before. And that's called The Totally True Tale of a Part-Time Wizard, which only English nerds would know this, but it's a nod to a relatively famous author named Sherman Alexie, who is Native American from Washington State. And he wrote a great book, a coming of age tale, called The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, about this native kid who wants to leave the reservation and go to the white school on the edge of the reservation, and he's caught between these two worlds. And so we read it every year in 8th grade for the Civil Rights Unit, because being in South Dakota, I feel my kids need to understand the struggle of Native Americans, because we're one of the states where the population is large, and I want my kids to understand that. And so then, as a nod to Sherman Alexie, I thought The Totally True Tale of a Part-Time Wizard kind of has a ring to it. And I appreciated in the story of Absolutely True Diary the dual life that Arnold has to live. And I myself have lived a dual life, my whole life. I was 1 foot in a player's handbook and 1 foot in whatever I was trying to achieve on the other side. I never realized that those two things would become the same thing, but they did, of course, eventually. As weird as life is, that's what happens, right?
So before we go on, you mentioned Victor, and it's a very important story. And you said during your TED Talk that you wouldn't tell the story again, I think, right?
I don't really want to.
Yeah. So this is an unanticipated plug for your TEDx talk. Kade Wells, Sioux Falls TEDx is not up yet, but it will be up. Look it up. You need to hear the story of Victor. It's holy. It's, well.
Yeah. I'm sorry that I just won't tell you.
Yeah. It's well. Yeah, look up the TikTok. You need to listen to this story.
I'll talk about anything else.
So Kate, did you meet any resistance at first when you said to administrators and teachers, "Hey, this is my idea," or did they all kind of greet you with open arms and go, yeah, that makes sense?
Well, it started with creation of a club in my ninth grade center. When my wife and I moved to Houston, I was teaching in a ninth grade, which I really liked. Ninth grade was I thought was a good year to be teaching. And so we started a club. And so the principals had zero cares to give about an after school club. The cool thing was we got to start tracking data of the kids who were in that club. And we got to see when they entered and when they exited, and their data was always better, right? Every single time. So they weren't concerned in that vein. It was then, like, I think about this, it was probably the second semester of my second year in Houston, where I was during my reading intervention periods, where I had like a class of kids. This is before I was polling kids for specific intervention. This was just me seeing what would happen if I taught a group of kids how to play D&D. And this was, probably 16 kiddos in a room at a time at this point in these reading intervention spaces. And what I remember it I didn't ask. No, I didn't ask. No, I didn't ask anybody. No. Why would I do that? I mean, I learned long ago in my life what asking for stuff gets you. You don't ask for stuff. You just do stuff, and then you prove that you were right. And if you're wrong, you say, I'm sorry. But so far that hasn't really happened. So one day I'm teaching my kiddos, and they all got players' handbooks open and their character sheets, and they're like rolling dice and playing and stuff. And my administrator comes in, Dr. Cindy, and this was before I knew her well. And I'm a loose cannon, bro. So like administrators are always a little leery of me because they know that I'm different in the way that I'm going to approach them than everybody else does. Okay. Like I don't have a fear of them like everyone else seems to have. And I think that comes from my prior life where I was, wriggled about so badly that I'm like, oh, just an administrator. Okay. And I don't really feel that way in my heart, but when it comes to conflict, like I'm not afraid, right? I'm not going to back down. And so anyway, Dr. Bench comes in and she sees these kiddos and they're like talking and chittering and they're like, then laughter happens and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh man, I didn't expect her to come in. And as you're never supposed to expect them to come in. And she's looking around and she's like, and she says, what are they doing? And I said, well, they're playing Dungeons and Dragons, Cindy, and Dr. Benj. And I handed her, I knew right away that I had to do something right now. I took a player's handbook and a character sheet and I put it on the first page of the book and I handed it to her. And I said, before you freak out, take a look at this. And she starts to turn the pages. And I said, okay, so character creation actually starts here. She said, character creation. And I was like, yeah, here's their graphic organizer, and the character sheets are amazingly complicated graphic organizers, right? So it teaches kids how to sort information. And keep in mind, this is Title I days, right? So those kiddos' academic skills, they needed scaffolding and lots of help and things. And then she started flipping through the player's handbook. And this is where I learned this trick is when you have a resistant parent or a resistant administrator, you just hand them a player's handbook and kind of back away like it's a bomb or something and let them look. Because the first thing Dr. Benj did was noticed all the vocabulary. She's like, this is like really rich vocabulary. And I was like, yeah. And it's tied to a game, which means if the kid doesn't learn what the word means, they can't play the game. And the kids will learn what the words mean because they want to play the game because they're in school, and playing a game in school is, fun. It's cool. It's better than the normal thing. And D&D by and large, I'm telling you, okay, so like playing D&D is much more difficult than a normal daily task that I've seen almost anybody do. Right. Okay. So like the cognitive process that's happening in a child's brain when they're playing D&D is a lot harder than writing a paper or reading a book. It's much more on point. So proving this to administration becomes the game, right? So anyway, I showed her and I said, we do this a couple times a week. And she was sold. And she's like, I think this is awesome. I think this is a great reading intervention tool. And that's when she suggested that next year I pull specific individuals and let's see what happens. And that's the story of the guys that is so important. And then when we wanted to move home, and so I interviewed over the phone because we were at distance, right? We were looking for jobs. It was nice to move home and have jobs waiting for us. And my principal, Micah Fesler, one of the greatest individuals I've ever known, forget boss, forget principal. He's just one of the greatest people I've known. He was interviewing me for the advanced English position here, and his son was in 6th grade in the advanced program. And he knew that I was going to end up teaching his son if I got hired. And apparently I said all the right things, but he was a D&D nerd from back in the day and understood very vividly what this game could do for kids, but he had never thought of, the thing that I was doing, right? Like, you bring it into school, like bring it into education, make them play. Don't ask, hey, would you like to join club? No, like, this is going to be a blanket effect and you're not all going to love it. And that's fine. But for the kids that do love it, they wouldn't have had access to it before. So it's worth the blanket effect. And so anyway, they hired me for the advanced program, and I would end up, teaching his son how to play Dungeons and Dragons. And he's a senior next year, and he's been part of the D&D club at the high school that my wife runs this whole time. The friendships have been solidified since the time they were in 7th grade with me. Just like with my friends, they are going to be friends forever. And I did that, right? That's how you end up feeling. It's like, I did that, and it's okay to do that when it's a good thing, right? Like when it's like something that you're really doing that's really helping kids. One of those kiddos is autistic, real autistic. And had it not been for D&D, he wouldn't have found his gravity of friends either. And they're great, great pals, and all the things that facilitates. Friendship, like I've said, friendship is one of the most meaningful tools that we can have in this life. And watching that occur under your purview is an amazing gift, right? It's an amazing gift. So, of course, I ran into conflict. A parent will be like, they're Susie. I always call the little girls Susie Q. The little girls that don't like Dungeons and Dragons, I always call them Susie Q because I got to call them something. So Susie Q will go home to their mom and they'll be like, Mom, I don't like this game. I don't get it. It's stupid. Then mom is like, well, why do they even have to play this game in the first place? And so then administration comes in and they're like, what's going on? Why are you doing this? Da, 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 da. There are parents that always say, there are parents who are concerned. I'm like, you mean the one parent? You mean that? Is that what you mean, is the one parent? Don't tell me there's more than one. And then they'll be like, well, whatever, the parents are concerned. And I say, okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go talk to the kiddos and find out how many of them really love what's happening and how many of their parents are happy about it. And then we'll just hold apples to apples real quick and find out which percentage is higher here. I already, and so these are, I know that I'm audacious, right? I get that, but it's being audacious that has brought this far with kids and has helped this many people. And had I backed down from stuff when it came up, none of this would be happening. No kids would be bonding at friendship in 7th grade that lasts all the way through the rest of their lives. And I knew this, and that's why in your intro there, Jason, it has been being audacious that, because of my passion, I know that I'm right? I'm not right about everything. I'm just a guy, but I know that I'm right about this. And when I say, okay, so this one parent's upset, I will let that one parent tell the other 99% of parents why we can no longer play D&D. How about that? And they're not used to or ready for these conversations as administration. They're not used to somebody who's going to put their feet in the ground, look them straight in the eye and say, no, like, you're wrong. And they are too. That parent is wrong. And if that parent can't come around to this idea that we're going to play a game on Fridays, then you can send them here to talk to me. I'll put a player's handbook in front of them with a character sheet and explain why this is one of the most amazing games that children could ever learn how to play. And that's pretty much where it's left off. Now here we are so many years later, and I don't have to deal with that stuff anymore. I'm the Wizard Wells now.
So, just two more quick questions and we'll wrap up. What does excellence mean to you, Wizard Wells?
Excellence? Excellence means being the best you can be with what you have available to you at the time. That's what excellence means. Excellence means I'm dyslexic. I can still write a book. Excellence is I've got a bum leg, but I can still run track. Excellence is, I don't see things the same way as people do, but I will try to see things from people's point of view because I want my life to be excellent. Excellence is doing the best you can with what you have. That's excellence to me.
Excellence is doing the best you can with what you have. That's awesome. And last question, in my work, on this show, I talk about a lot about the power of doing our imperfect best. And what it means to me is I envision the best I want for myself and life around me. And then I go towards that, give it an honest go. And then when mistakes and obstacles and everything comes up, instead of saying, oh, see that all came up, I'm not going to go that way anymore. I try to learn from all that and move forward with more passion, more conviction. What does doing your imperfect best mean to you, Wizard Wells?
Well, it's like every day, it seems like. Yeah, I'm a highly flawed individual. I've taken lots of damage over the course of my life, and I wouldn't be me without my damage, right? My imperfect self is myself. My imperfect best is showing up every day. Like, I'm one of those teachers who's like never gone, right? Like, I'm sick like death and I'm here still. So you talk about doing my imperfect best. That's like another example. Another good example of this is what I do with kids doesn't always work, right? You'll have cohorts of kids that just don't buy, and they won't. And there's usually an archetype involved, and I'm going to spare the details, but there's usually an archetype involved, and they'll hate it for the sake of hating it, right? They hate it because they hate anything, right? That's and so bringing that imperfection of like, this is my biggest passion, and this is something that will really greatly help your life if you just let it. But there are people, who don't let anything help their life, right? And so I still have to approach everything with the same passion, even though I know that 25% of them hate this, and they're definitely going to let me know, maybe not with outward behavior, but all the energy tells me they basically want me to die because they don't want to do this. But for the other 75% of kids, I can't let that affect me. And so it is imperfect. All of it's imperfect. Our life is imperfect. Like, I don't even like choosing which pants I'm going to wear in the morning. Talk about imperfect self, right? Like, I just, I don't know. Like, I like Einstein, at one point I had a different color flannel for every day of the week. So I just like, doing my imperfect best is like literally every day of my life. I don't really know how else to cross it. Like, nothing is going to be perfect ever is going to anything be perfect. But if you don't try your best, you're never going to be excellent, right? So if excellence is doing what you can with what you have, then that is being your best imperfect self, right? And trying to do what you can with your life. Otherwise, your whole life is going to be wasted, right? Like if you, I just give up, like we've met people who have given up. They're not inspiring at all. They're not cool. You don't want to be them, right? Nobody wants to be them. And, therefore, no matter what, like, life has handed you, I would be a great model of failure had I given up. I would have been like, yep, don't do what that guy did. I didn't. I got up over and over and over again and dusted myself off and saw a future. And largely when I kind of just let go of the steering wheel for a while, that's when things got best, honestly, where when the wind started blowing the boat in its own direction, I just kind of kept doing my thing and kept looking at data and kept helping kids, and life got better and better and better and better and better as each one of those moments passed. And so I took my imperfect life and used it for good instead of evil. And that is my ability of being my imperfect best, is taking all my damage, all the dents in my armor and the chips in my shield and the rust on my sword, and using it to help kids, to help them avoid some of the damage that I took, because there's certainly some needless damage in there, and using that wisdom to help the next generation of children and inspire them maybe to do the same for the next generation, right? And so on and so on. Yeah, imperfect best. That's right here, right now, all the time.
Kade Wells, you're very inspiring. Really great to talk with you. Thanks for taking the time.
You're welcome.
And please, I'm going to wrap up the show, but please stay on just for a few minutes.
You got it.
Things need to upload.
Sure.
And so thank you all for joining today. Whether you're watching live or whether you're watching 50 years from now, thanks for joining. And please comment. We love comments, and then other commenters and other people watching get things from comments, or it just generates discussion. And so please do that if you're so inspired. And thanks for being you. And tune in for another episode next week where I'll interview a guest. I know I'll show up awkwardly, awesomely, because I'm never completely perfect, but none of us are, and we can celebrate the imperfections, the awkwardness, and still go forward with passion like Kade does, and impact an extraordinary amount of people. And thanks for being you. Take care. Until next time.